All right, so just returning briefly to humanism, um, the textbook was mentioning, and you've noticed this, and you've probably noticed this in almost all the sections that you ever read on history, that women do play a role. There's never a movement or of time where women aren't getting involved and proving that they're just as capable as men, but are finding that they're being shut out. I mean, just look at Joan of Arc. Here's a young teenage girl that was able to pull off a military campaign, right? And we've talked about the fact that that wealthy, powerful men often had their wives running their wealthy, powerful estates, um, and and so on. So, in the humanist realm, you also had women who were able to accomplish the same kind of achievements as the male humanists. Isota Nogorola, I think is how you'd say it, and then Laura Caretta. These are 15th century women that not only did they just get the same kind of education and excel, but they were really feminists who argued for women have more control of their lives and equality in education. And I think it's kind of interesting because I still hear arguments by certain men groups or random conversations. Well, if women were equal to men, why didn't they produce? Why are all the books that we read by men? And it's kind of odd that that argument still gets brought up when we know that women were actually barred from universities and culturally shunned. The Isota mentions that she was even insulted by other women because she disrupted the gender norms, and she was accused of incest and promiscuousness, for basically taking on doing things that were supposed to be only in the realm of men. Okay, and so I think that we should, honor them and also realize the implications of what they even said. I mean, you look at the section on page 377 where Laura says, "I would have been silent, believe me, if that savage old enmity of yours had attacked me alone," referring to a man attacking her, insulting her, but I cannot tolerate you having attacked my entire sex. For this reason, my thirsty soul seeks revenge. My sleeping pen is aroused to literary struggle. Raging anger stirs mental passions long changed by silence," and so on. I mean, she is basically demonstrating with great literary style, how dare you insult not just me, but act as if we women, have been incapable of being as great as I am, basically, right? And so, that's an interesting aspect. But as the textbook mentions, the first woman to earn a degree from a university only did so in 1678, and it took another 200 years before many others could follow her example. So that is the problem with the system, not with the sex. All right, moving on. The influence of ancient culture. I'm not going to talk too much about this section, even though it might be the most important one. The reason is that I'm just going to kind of briefly go over some of these other aspects of the text, and I'm going to finish with a documentary piece. But Copernicus, Galileo, have we all not heard of these characters and the importance that they contributed to the scientific world, to humanity at large? And despite getting in trouble with the church and questioning old scientific thought, such as Ptolemy's idea that everything revolves around the earth, and realizing that it didn't, on so many levels, I would like to just go on and on about the power and importance of these Renaissance scientists. I mean, we even saw the fallopian tube of females named after Gabriella Fallopio. Um, and also, what's interesting is many of the texts they got and used, even as we go into the arts, came from Arabic texts. Did you notice that? So, um, we're talking about exploring the ancient world, an ancient scientist, and then actually going beyond the classics. So on one hand, this was looking back. The Renaissance time was seeing the past as a great glory, but it gave also these new things going on here, enabled people to be innovative and to bring us more into a present reality that we are actually still aware of, that these thinkers and these people who studied the body and the universe brought us to the more pure reality of how the natural world works, and can't be overstated enough. At this point of your life, if you have not become familiar with, let's just say, Copernicus and Galileo, get on YouTube and start looking up some documentaries on them as well, because you should catch up. These are the people you got to know. And there's many great documentaries on them that I'd like to recommend. By the way, I just always want to advocate this. You got to be careful about the documentaries. You got to be careful about the quality, and not just trust everything. But there is so much now out there that there was not when I was in college. And you can really learn a lot. I mean, if you're just enjoying getting little, reading these chapters and hearing some lectures from me, and you're getting exposed to documentaries, you can see how quickly they can bring you to speed on learning on many things. So I just want to point that out. Okay. Just going to also quickly talk about the influence of antiquity and the nature and the arts, and the innovations of arts as well. I mean, Renaissance is almost always strictly associated with art, and I think for many people, when you think about the Renaissance, you're probably thinking more about art and sculptures, and this is all coming from this time period and these important names. Some of them, like Donatello, more than maybe some other ones like Ghiberti, but in any case, this is a very important aspect of the Renaissance times. And you can just see, looking at the styles here of realism and naturalism, and the way that they did reliefs. These are things now that maybe we take for granted because, we're we're in a digital age. We're not so easily impressed anymore, but we should be very impressed. Okay, so we also know that the patron was important. That's also been discussed quite heavily. And we already saw the statue of David. The Sistine Chapel is also one of the greats of Renaissance culture. And these ideas did spread throughout Europe, okay? And that's just something that you should know. I'm going to kind of just briefly go over some of these points that hopefully you have read thoroughly in your text. Here's a great depiction that a female artist does, showing girls doing intellectual things, not sewing, right? Playing chess. And again, here's an example of a woman artist who's showing women outside of a stereotype. All right. Machiavelli and the Prince. So, as I was mentioning in one of my other lectures about the way things seem so modern in the Renaissance, so close to home, in terms of some of the corruption that we see in the politics, and yet some of the amazingness that we're seeing of the arts and the sciences, and the political thinking, no less. Machiavelli is known Famously for the prince, he's associated with the term "the ends justify the means." He's mentioned at the beginning of this chapter. He's one of the most controversial but also well-known characters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you watch about 20 something minutes. I'm going to write it down for you. I'll find out where it's at for you to watch a documentary on him, and then I will briefly kind of finish with one last lecture afterwards. Okay, sorry.